Hello there. Britain's new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak formed his cabinet. Yes, he's still there. Some Johnson allies had to go, though. On his first day as Britain's new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak formed his new government team. Number 10 Downing Street declared that he wanted to keep Jeremy Hunt, for example, as Chancellor of the Exchequer. The Conservative politician is regarded as a pragmatist. For the past 12 years, he has been Minister of Culture and Sports, Minister of Health, and Minister of Foreign Affairs. But most of all, he is known as the man who stabilized the economy after the turmoil caused by Liz Truss. On October 14th, Hunt replaced his predecessor Kwasi Kwarteng, reversing almost all of the tax measures Kwarteng had announced. The politician writes on Twitter that times are getting tough, but that he's protecting the weak in the foreground. The new finance minister is due to present a medium-term financial plan next Monday, but we have to talk about that one later. James Cleverly remains Foreign Secretary in the Sunak-appointed government. He's considered a close ally of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. On Twitter, the minister stressed Britain's ties to Ukraine. Secretary of Defense Ben Wallace will also retain his post. I think everybody has expected that one. However, there is a change in the Ministry of Justice. Here, Dominic Raab takes over the post. He is also appointed Deputy Prime Minister. Heard that one before. Raab is considered the most important ally of the new British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. He was Secretary of State under Johnson before Liz Truss became deputy. No, that was before Liz Truss, and there he was Deputy Prime Minister from 19 to 21. However, he did not get a seat in Truss' cabinet. He was criticized for his plan to reduce the influence of the case law of the European Court of Human Rights on British legislation with his so-called Bill of Rights. British Home Secretary Suella Braverman, who was sacked for breaking the rules, is back in office less than a week after resignation. Braverman had resigned from her cabinet 2 days before Truss' resignation, after she forwarded an official document containing or using her private email address in violation of the ministerial rules. The politician combined the probably forced resignation with sharp criticism of the Truss government's course. Braverman, from the party's right wing, represents an extremely hard line on immigration policy, so we will hear about deportations to Rwanda again. The new General Secretary of Sunak's Conservative Party will be Nadhim Zahawi, who recently campaigned for Johnson's return to Downing Street. Like Secretary of State Cleverly or Foreign Minister Cleverly, the appointment is seen as an attempt to involve the camp around Johnson, whose relationship with Sunak is heavily strained. In return, at least 11 ministers and state secretaries from the Truss government are leaving the cabinet. Among them are 3 of Johnson's close allies: eccentric Economic Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg, Education Secretary Kit Malthouse, and former Tory Secretary-General Jake Berry. In the past few days, Rees-Mogg had spoken out in favor of the return of his longtime ally Boris Johnson. On Monday, he then congratulated Sunak on Twitter and announced that he would support him. Rees-Mogg has long been considered one of the toughest Brexit hardliners in Johnson's cabinet. As a loyalist to the former Prime Minister, he had massively attacked Sunak during the race to succeed Johnson. In July, he announced he would not be part of a cabinet headed by Sunak. His behavior towards Boris Johnson, his disloyalty, means I could never support him, and he wouldn't want me in his cabinet anyway. That's what he said, according to The Guardian. Well, he's not in the cabinet, but he wrote he would support him. New British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has considered postponing his proposed budget for next week. That's why I said we have to talk about this later. He has a £40 billion hole to plug, according to a Times report. Sunak is expected to meet Treasury Secretary Jeremy Hunt this Wednesday, so today, when I'm filming this, to discuss his proposals to increase taxes and cut public spending, the report said. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss spokeswoman said last week that Truss' successor would decide whether to present a budget planned for October 31st. Meanwhile, British opposition leader Keir Starmer has sharply attacked the new Prime Minister. He would be a weak head of government who will always put the interest of his Conservative Party ahead of those of the country. That's what the Labour Party leader said at a meeting with his shadow cabinet on Tuesday. Rishi Sunak stabbed Boris Johnson in the back when he thought he could get his job. And in the same way, he will now try to deny the Tories' results over the past few years and months and pretend he is a new broom. Well, the accusation that Sunak's resignation as finance minister in the summer was responsible for the end of then Prime Minister Johnson is, as I said, also raised by some Conservative opponents of the new head of government. Sunak was beaten up by his rival Liz Truss, who later failed during the party's internal vote in the summer, Starmer said. He is also responsible for the fact that Great Britain suffers from the lowest growth of the industrialized countries and the highest inflation, and that millions cannot pay their bills. And now he plans to make working people pay the price for the Tories' economic crash, Starmer said. Starmer acknowledged that Conservative popularity ratings could pick up again under Sunak, but he knew anyway that Labour's huge lead in the polls was just a happy story, as he puts it. But I don't necessarily think that they will catch up with Labour in the next months. I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.